Eugene Springfield Info Radio. News, information, and entertainment. 1320 Info Radio. A Cumulus station.
My name is Jacob Larson, and this is the Common Sense Show. Got some quick info for you. Next week, we're going to have a show that you're not going to want to miss. We'll be starting the year off right with a bang. We have a very special guest that's going to be on the show, a lady by the name of Blair Adams. Blair is the president of the Black Student Union at LCC, the Lane Community College here in Eugene, Oregon. The Black Student Union, as she described it, is designed to provide an environment where people can talk and learn about things affecting the black community or the history it has. So Blair has agreed to come on the show next week, and she'll bring her vice president along with her, and we'll be discussing the very current controversial topic of race. Now, she's asked me what kind of questions I would have, and I responded to her with this. What I said was, I'm planning on doing a relatively informal interview, meaning that my questions will be basically come from what you say in regards to your organization, yourself, and what you believe. But to give you an idea of some basic thought process, I'd say, I don't believe that the color of a person's skin has any bearing on whether or not they are a good father or a good mother. It is an indicator of whether or not they are a good husband or a good wife. It has absolutely no bearing or relevance in life. I believe the concept of racism is an absurd concept. I don't believe in black history. I believe in history. I think that black and whites, if I must use those terms, and I hate doing so, share the same history. I would question the concept of the BSU. Isn't that a racist title to an organization? I think the concept of race in America is misused and abused by the media, political groups, and various organizations in an effort to catch viewers, to get votes, and increase memberships. I think people who buy into stuff like that are falling for a lie. And I think that lie is perpetuated by ignorant do-gooders. Now, that's what I said, and that was my response to her, and surprisingly enough, she still agreed to be on the show. So next week, make sure you're tuned in. Get to a radio or find a link online and listen in, because you're sure to have a great show. Now, I don't know if an hour will do this topic justice. We may just hit the tip of the iceberg, but it's going to be an excellent show, so there's no doubt about it. So make sure you listen in. Blair Adams from the Black Student Union, and we're going to be talking about race. We've recently had a holiday and a new year to celebrate. I don't know about you peeps, but I had a great Christmas and an equally good New Year celebration. I hung out with my kids and got to watch them bring in the New Year, jamming on Christmas presents their grandpa and grandma got for them. My son was given an electric guitar, and my daughter was given an electric keyboard, and they cranked the volume and played them as loud as they possibly could as soon as the clock struck 12. It was awesome. I have both of them here in the studio with me today, and they have a special word that they'd like to give their mom on her special birthday. My daughter is Nicole. She's 11 years old. Here, step up to the mic there, girl. Her name is Nicole. And say what you want to say.
Happy birthday, Mommy.
That's it?
Yeah, that's it.
And here's my son, David. He is 15 years old. Go for it, bro.
Love you, Mom. Happy birthday.
Okay, so seriously, I woke you guys. I got up early. I woke you guys up. I told you to be ready by 8:30. You weren't. I had to wait for you to get ready. It was freezing cold. Wrestled you guys down to the station. And that's all you got to say? That's it? All right.
Well, they're on the air, you know. It's a little unnerving.
I guess it's unnerving. I guess you're not. I mean, you got to be careful. I mean, seriously, you guys can say something else if you'd like. David, you got anything else or anybody else you'd like to say something to? No, you're good to go. All right. Okay, so last week we discussed the latest in the mass shootings that have plagued the country, and I talked a bit about things with Lita Sellers and Theron here in the studio. I had posted some questions that I had on the show, and I posted those questions on my wall on Facebook. Those questions were, I'm just going to do a quick recap here. Number one, now can we bring prayer back into schools? Now can we put Christ back into Christmas? Why do we ignore or dismiss the spiritual aspect of things in this life? Now can we call that which is evil, evil? Many more need to die before we're willing to call a spade a spade. When stuff like this happens, we all tend to speak of God and we ask for prayer for the families. The president has been quoted of doing that. So where is the separation of church and strategies like this happen? Why is it deemed permissible by unbelievers or secular establishments for elected officials to encourage prayer and strengthening belief in God during these times? If the need for prayer and looking to God is present after these events, why aren't we encouraging that type of thing prior to these events? A comprehensive psychological profile of the killers need to be established. When will profiling be accepted tool to help prevent these events in society? Why are we so careful to bring up the moral decay that we see happening in society, and why do we demonize or dismiss people to do that? Now, I didn't get all my questions answered. We were only able to cover so many on the last show. And actually, it's been actually 2 weeks, because this last show was I had to do a rerun, the holiday season there. But on my wall, when I posted it on my wall, I did get some feedback. And the prayer in schools question got a few people's panties in a bunch. But a woman by the name of Brandy Faust Clark had some good questions that I thought I'd mention. She said, how does one go about allowing prayer in church causing religious segregation or fear-based hate-mongering? Do you separate them into a class of each denomination, or have a big theology class and discuss each religion and belief system? How do you get parents on board who are too fearful that their child will be converted to another faith? Who leads the children in prayer? What do you do with the atheists? Do you just hold quiet time in which children are allowed to guide themselves in prayer following the individual guidelines for each of their own family church? I'm in agreement that children should be allowed and encouraged to grow in their spirituality, but at what cost? Will we be biting off more than our already stressed school system can handle? I'm thinking it opens a whole new can of worms. Now, I didn't respond to her on the thread in which it was posted. I was hoping someone else would bite and provide a little bit more dialogue. The main thing that kept popping into my head while reading her post was, wow, wouldn't that be awesome? Wouldn't it be awesome to actually be discussing what types of prayers would be allowed in our schools? You know, as opposed to not having any. And see, I know she was looking for a bit more of a response than that. But basically, from my perspective, unless my question answered first, now can we allow prayer back in schools? Her questions are a moot point. They aren't worth taking the time to answer. Except the last one. Will we be biting off more than our already stressed school system can handle? I'm going to say no. An introduction of prayer in our schools will unite the school and build a solid foundation for people to go on. Not just in the school, but in the community and the school it's in. In short, things will get easier for staff, in my opinion. I posted a pic on my wall that said, Bibles aren't allowed in schools anymore, but are encouraged in prisons. If kids were allowed to read it at school, they may not end up in prison.
That's a very good point.
That's an interesting concept, isn't it?
Yeah, it is.
I mean, the picture was kind of cool.
Hey, actually, I had a quick question before you get going, because your kids are here. Do you guys still do the national anthem, or, sorry, the Pledge of Allegiance? Every Thursday.
So it's done once a week on Thursday.
Now, see, when I was a kid, that was first thing in the morning, every single morning.
Every
That's
morning,
what we did.
you face the flag, you put your hand across your heart, you give the Pledge of Allegiance.
Okay. Yeah, I was just curious about that.
Yeah, I agree. I grew up with the same thing.
Yeah.
So, yeah, that's interesting. I'm going to actually take those headphones off because I can't hear. So, yeah. If Bibles aren't allowed in schools anymore, but are encouraged in prisons, if children were to read it at school, they may not end up in prison. It sounds pretty basic. And the point is, if we are recognizing the value of belief after encountering that which is evil, why aren't we promoting belief prior to events that take place? But once again, some people got their panties in a bunch over that post. Guy by the name of Jason Jambondiguer. I don't know how to say his name. He's kind of a funky name. He says, which Bible and whose belief system will this cater to? And really, reading the Bible, I remember reading it, it freaking bored the hell out of me after one paragraph. And that's kind of funny because I can relate in some circumstances. Well, Jason, once again, that's a great question. One that, if it's being considered, is a good thing in my opinion. But until we as a society decide to recognize the value of belief, there's no point in wasting time to answer it. Hypothetically speaking, if all of a sudden out of the blue we all decided to pull our heads out of our backsides and chose to recognize the spiritual aspects of who we are, one solution would be to privatize our schools or offer school vouchers that would allow people to choose the schools in which their kids attended, in which case they would be choosing the belief system, their belief system, by default. As long as the school's curriculum fell in line with some educational standards, then the belief system could be taught unencumbered. That's one idea I'd have for it off the top of my head. As far as you being bored after one paragraph, what the hell paragraph you reading, bro? You want to find what's interesting in the Bible, look up and read some of the stories. Read about how Abraham, a guy that was married and couldn't have kids, but him and his lady wanted kids. So his lady tells him to tap her handmaiden. He does, and she becomes pregnant. And then his lady, who couldn't have kids, gets pregnant too. It's kind of a what the hell moment for Abraham. Or read about David. Everyone talks about how David slew Goliath, how he was a man of God. But no one seems to want to talk about how when he was king, he sent a guy to his death just so he could tap the guy's wife. Now that is interesting. There are all sorts of stories in the Bible that serve as examples of what not to do and why things are a bad idea. They're put in there so we don't have to live it in order to figure it out. You want to find an interest in the Bible, start checking stuff out like that out. Reading and dissecting stuff like that is interesting, in my opinion. Okay, so now back to my list of questions. No one wants to discuss evil. In fact, when sitting here with Lita and Theron, there was a bit of a hesitation on their part when it came to it, but evil that isn't acknowledged and isn't discussed is failed to be recognized and by default allowed to flourish. So those who refuse to acknowledge evil are fools, and by their dismissal of it, assist it. And I mean that in the nicest way possible. And that brings up the topic of the day. What is evil? We're going to do our best to describe and define evil. We're going to discuss why so many are afraid of talking about it. So if you have any questions for Theron or myself during the show, please call in at 541-284-7953. Once again, that number is 541-284-7953. Give us a call. Let us know what you think. So what is evil? Last show I described the events that took place at school as the embodiment of evil. Was that accurate? And I have got a stack of stuff there and that we can go through. I've looked up different stuff.
Nice.
So we can start out with some definitions. Dictionary definition, online dictionary, says evil is, they break it down into adjective or nouns. We'll just stick with the adjectives. Number one, morally bad or wrong, wicked, causing ruin, injury, or pain, harmful, characterized by or indicating future misfortune, bad or blameworthy to report, characterized by anger, spite, malice. It's a descriptive word that we're using to describe the things that we come across in life.
Mm-hmm.
Then you got the thesaurus. It says morally objectable, bad, black, immoral, iniquitous, reprobate, sinful, vicious, causing harm or injury, detrimental, harmful, hurtful, mischievous, bringing or predicting or characterized by misfortune, unfavorable, characterized by intense ill will or spite, hateful, malicious, vicious, wicked, venomous. So, descriptive word we're using to describe the circumstances and situations that we encounter on a routine basis. We've actually taken and we've given a name to it so that when we come across these things, we can point to it and go, that's of evil.
Mm-hmm.
But evil is a little bit more complex.
I think so.
Why do you think so?
Well, as I alluded to, the last time that we talked, I believe that we all create our own world through our thoughts and actions, right? So I don't know. It's challenging for me to think that somebody is inherently evil. I think that it's developed. Okay,
it's developed. Nature, so nature or nurture is what you're arguing there in terms of regards to the behavior.
Right. Exactly.
Of evil.
Yeah. I don't think that people necessarily are born evil. Now, I noticed you had an article there, which I'm actually really interested to read.
Well, I don't even know. This article, and to be honest, I haven't had a chance to get all the way through it. Yeah. I mean, it's quite a bit.
I think evil is cultivated in the minds of men.
Okay, well, the evil in and of itself, is something that it's highly debated. I mean, when I started doing some research on it, and like I said, I've got a stack of stuff here. You can see it. I've pulled through all sorts of stuff to come up with a valid premise on where I was going here. And the bottom line is, it is highly debated. There are logical arguments for it and against it. And it off branches into multiple different subtopics that we could dedicate the show a full hour and longer to some of these subtopics, some of them being of the devil, of demons, of spiritual aspect of things, of societal imposed morality and faith-based things. I mean, so evil it's kind of a broad topic. I mean, it's actually broader than I would have originally thought when we were first bringing it up. But like you said, I do have an article here. It's from the Smithsonian. I was at the dentist office the other day getting some work done, and I was sitting in the waiting area, and they had this magazine there, and it was Smithsonian magazine, and they had an article in there that said, "Are babies born good? New research offers surprising answers to the age-old question where morality comes from." And it's by Abigail Tucker. Now, it's published it's in Smithsonian Magazine, January 2013. Like I said, I've only had a chance to skim it. I haven't had a chance to read all the way through it. I would encourage some of the listeners to maybe look it up online, check it out. It is available online. I did print it up. January 2013 edition of the Smithsonian Magazine, Are Babies Born Good? Article written by Abigail Tucker. And it poses the question, is there some genetic trait that people are born with that makes them predisposed to good or bad behavior? So you find that interesting?
I find it interesting. Yeah, that would be an interesting read. Like I said, I'm of the mindset that it's cultivated, that people are not born
so
one way or the other.
But you make it really simple in saying that you think it's all nurture.
Yeah, I do.
It's all
I don't think babies are born evil. I think babies are born without beliefs, and those beliefs are cultivated through their influences.
Okay, but let's go back to some of the definitions here. Okay, we're talking about mischievous, unfavorable. Let's see. Find out some other ones. Selfishness. Doesn't that fit the qualifications of some babies?
I
weren't
suppose.
even listening to me, were you, bro?
Yeah, I was listening.
You're just sitting there kind of tuning me out.
Yeah.
I mean, so you say, okay, so babies weren't evil, but I mean, isn't some of their behavior, some of the things that they do, couldn't that be categorized as classified as being an evil? Evil being the opposite of good. Good babies sit there and they don't cry. They just, they're good.
If a baby's crying, there's usually a reason for it. Either they're teething or
out of the box. Out of the box answer. Totally out of the box answer.
Yeah. I have a hard time fathoming that people are inherently evil.
Well, let's look. Okay, well, there's a lot of people who agree with you, and that's part of the thing. Based on some of the stuff I've read, there's quite a few things. Okay, so I looked up evil from Wikipedia, the free encyclopedia. I know some people out there don't like Wikipedia. I think Wikipedia is a great starting point for researching stuff. It has a lot of stuff that's listed in there. Do you take everything that Wikipedia has on there as gospel? Probably not.
Not at all.
It's a great starting point.
Anybody can post on Wikipedia.
Right. In terms of research, so it'll open up the doors to a lot of stuff.
Sure.
One of the things is evil is profound immorality, especially when regarded as a supernatural force. For example, in religious belief, usually perceived as a dualistic opposite of good. Definitions of evil vary, as does the analysis of its root motives and causes. However, evil is commonly associated with conscious and deliberate wrongdoing, discrimination designed to harm others, humiliation of people designed to diminish their psychological well-being and dignity, destructiveness, motives of causing pain or suffering for selfish or malicious intentions, and acts of unnecessary or indiscriminate violence. Now, we've seen some of that. We saw some of that in the shootings that took place.
Yeah.
So, for people to look at those shootings and define or classify as those being, seeing those characteristics and calling them evil, I'd say they're fairly accurate.
Yeah.
They're
Yeah.
pretty
Well,
accurate.
no doubt about it. It was an evil act, but
Okay, well,
was
we're
he
gonna
actually?
we're gonna go further because
All
I know
right.
you're one. Is this person evil? The philosophical question of whether morality is absolute or relative leads to questions about the nature of evil, with views falling into one of four camps: moral absolutism, amoralism, moral relativism, or moral universalism. Let's see here. Break down farther down the thing. Western philosophy. Spinoza, Benedict D. Spinoza states, "By good I understand that which we certainly know is useful to us." So he's saying that things that are useful for us are considered good. By evil, on contrary, I understand that we certainly know that which we certainly know hindered us from possessing anything that is good. So anything that prevents you from accessing things that are good or that you recognize are good is bad or evil, and that which is useful for us or works well for us is considered good, according to Spinoza. Spinoza assumes a quasi-mathematical style and states these further propositions, which he purports to prove or demonstrate from the above definitions in part 4 of his Ethics. Now, he's got them broke down. I'm not going to go into those prepositions listed out, but I want to go on to Friedrich Nietzsche. In Rejection of a Judeo-Christian Morality, addresses this in 2 works, Beyond Good and Evil, and On the Genealogy or Morals, where he essentially says that the natural function, non-good, has been socially transformed into the religious concept of evil by the slave mentality of the weak and oppressed masses who resent their masters. So Nietzsche believes the concept, the religious concept that we have today of what is evil is based on societal manipulation. So he's saying that that's all that's about. It's just an extension of that. Ayn Rand wrote in The Virtue of Selfishness, since reason is man's basic means of survival, that which is proper to the life of a rational being is the good. That which negates, opposes, or destroys it is evil. This is elaborated in Atlas Shrugged. Thinking is man's only basic virtue, from which all others proceed, and his basic vice, the source of all his evils. It is the nameless act which all you practice, but struggle never to admit. The act of blanking out, the willful suspension of one's consciousness, the refusal to think, not blindness, but the refusal to see, not ignorance, but the refusal to know. It is the act of unfocusing your mind and inducing an inner fog to escape the responsibility of judgment on the unstated premise that a thing will not exist if only you refuse to identify it. That A will not be A so long as you do not pronounce the verdict. It is evil. The philosophical notion, such as those of Nietzsche, Rand, Spinoza, above, can be compared and contrasted with the theological notion below, but it should be noted that Rand and Nietzsche are both atheists, and Spinoza was not. So, Rand basically follows similar to Nietzsche in that which is good is, or that which works for us in terms of what we want is good, and that which works counter to that is evil. What I find fascinating about that is they're both atheists, and yet they have come to the determination that they have to quantify what is evil also. It is a question that has to be answered. How do you define it? It's not an objection of evil or saying that evil doesn't exist. Don't go so far as to fall into the spiritual ramifications of evil. And 9 times out of 10, you're going to find those ramifications in religion or philosophy, stuff like that.
Right.
But what do you think about their premise?
I think they're dead on. I don't think their faith really has much to do with it. I mean,
Well, how is that?
you don't have to be religious to know what's good or bad.
Okay, but how is that philosophy flawed? How is what they're saying flawed? They're basically saying, the things that you want to acquire or that are useful, that work for you, is what you'd consider good. And the things that work counter to that don't allow you to achieve those things, are the things that are bad. So let's step a little further here. Let's go further down the rabbit hole. In a situation of murder,
Right.
if I'm someone who decides I want to murder somebody, somehow, I've arrived to the conclusion or justified it in my brain that that it's in my favor to do so.
Right.
So by doing so, if I accomplish that, if I set out to murder somebody and I accomplish that, and I in fact kill them, in my mind, it's a good thing. I've accomplished what I wanted to accomplish.
Right.
So for me, it's good.
Yeah.
But for the person I murdered,
Yeah, I see your point.
for the person I murdered, that wasn't so good.
wasn't so good. Not so good for their family or the society in general. Right. So.
Okay, well, that type of idea or concept falls in line with what Nietzsche and Rand are trying to portray.
Well, now that you
But it's not
mention it like
necessarily.
that, yeah.
It's not necessarily the
Right.
best avenue for that.
Yep.
You see what I mean?
Yep.
So, the other part of the equation would be, it's like, okay, well, what if you committed a crime? And I mean, for instance, for most people, you say stealing's wrong. To steal from somebody's wrong. Everybody knows you're not supposed to steal. They
Right.
teach it to kids. You don't steal crayons and erasers and stuff like that. But what if there is a benefit to stealing if you're in fact the person who's stealing,
Okay.
not the person who's stole from,
Right.
but the person who's stealing. I mean, he receives a monetary benefit from stealing. So why is
You're
it wrong?
You're
why is it
talking about
wrong to
the
steal?
recipient of the stolen goods. Is that what you're saying?
No,
or-
I'm talking about the person who's
The person
doing
who
the
did it.
stealing.
Okay.
Okay, the person who's doing the stealing.
Right.
It's good for him. It's good for them.
In their own mind.
No, I mean monetary value. They have it. They have it in their hand. It has
Right.
value to them. They can sell it. They can keep it. They can use it. It's theirs.
Yeah.
So in that circumstance, it's not an evil thing. It's not a bad thing to them. It's a very good thing to them. So what makes it bad?
What makes it bad is, it's,
Somebody suffered a loss.
yes, exactly.
Do I have to finish all the sentences for you, bro? I
Yes,
Are
you
you
do.
tired today? Or
No, I'm
what?
good. I'm good. I'm good.
Somebody suffered a loss. Okay,
Yeah.
so is it only bad if the person who suffered a loss is privy to it or knows about it?
Well, it kind of goes back to the Robin Hood story about, stealing from the rich and giving to the poor, and so therefore it's not such a bad thing. But,
Yeah, because you figure out a way to justify it.
but in the morality part of it is it's not good.
Okay, but from an atheistic standpoint,
Yeah.
why wouldn't it be good? Especially if you can steal from somebody, commit an act of evil,
Yeah.
and it be unbeknownst to them. They're not aware of it. They haven't lost anything. Seriously, you talk about the what do you call it? The protesters of what were they called again? The protesters,
Occupy Wall Street?
Yeah,
Yeah.
the Occupy Wall Street protesters.
Yeah.
I totally place it. What about
I
those
have to
people?
finish all your
If they
sentences for
if they- yeah,
Yeah.
if the opportunity, if they had the opportunity to steal from some of these rich people, and they could do it in a way where they didn't get caught, and they
Right.
could do it in a way, well, I mean, they were never, nobody even knew it was stealing. I mean, you've seen some of those movies where they take a fraction of a half a penny.
Oh,
And they-
like Office Space?
Yeah,
Yeah,
and
I
they-
love that
Yeah,
movie.
Office
Yeah.
Space. Actually, I just saw that.
Yeah.
And they stick that. That was a brilliant concept.
Yeah, it is.
I was like, what? That's freaking awesome. They take like a half a penny and they have it transferred into this account.
Uh-huh.
And then it grows and grows and grows. And it's like the people that they're stealing from, they don't even know.
Right.
So no crime has been committed then, right?
Well, sure it has. I mean, it's still technically stealing.
Okay, but it's not. How do you say it's bad?
Mm-hmm.
How do you say it's bad if morality is relative?
No, I get it. It's just
Morality
like in
is
the movie,
relative, and
it's
it
that-
works. It works for the thieves. You
Right.
didn't actually do any harm because the definition on evil here is you're actually inflicting harm. You're not inflicting any harm. The
Right.
loss is not known.
Right.
So all's fair in love and war, right?
I assume. Yeah. Yeah, that's a very interesting concept.
Yeah.
Sure.
I mean, if things that are evil are only regarded evil,
Yeah.
as long as there is a harm or hurt or something inflicted, then
Right. Well,
as long as you can
it's-
get away with it and nobody's hurt, you're good.
Yeah.
If you're looking at it from a secular standpoint, I'm just saying the morality of things. When you look at stuff like that, morality in and of itself is based on the balance of what is good and what is evil, and it is either theist-based, biblically speaking, or belief-based, or it is society imposed.
Right.
Societal imposed morality is 150% flexible, bro.
Yeah. You're right.
I mean, it is 150% flexible, and people that don't acknowledge that, they have, in my mind, I mean, they kind of like I've heard people say, well, God is a societal constraint, or it is or societal restraint, or it is a fence. The concept of God is a fence or societal restraint. Listen, if you remove God and you say, well, I'm just going to I don't believe in God, and you put secular morality up there as a restraint, you're using basically man-made beliefs to govern behavior. And that to me seems really scary, because it just depends on the location, the culture, the person you're talking to, whether or not those belief systems have any weight to them. I mean, 9 times out of 10, they kind of don't, because if it works for you, if you can figure out a way to conduct and behave evil, what people would determine or label or call evil,
Right.
but it works out in your benefit, then it's not evil to you.
Right.
It's good.
Right. And that is, again, that's cultivated in your own mind, your own belief system, that you've come to believe that, okay, this action is okay and this action is not okay.
So it's all
So
psychologically based.
Pretty much, and that's the way I see it. Yeah, but it's like it's the way that you are brought up. It's your own influences. Like if you believe that it's okay to steal something from somebody else who isn't going to miss it, then it's not a bad thing.
Well, and once again, it's like I said. I mean, if you're able to steal from somebody and they're not going to know it, have you in fact
Done
hurt
wrong.
anyone? If you're using the gauge of I'm not hurting anyone as a way to define or describe
Right.
your morality or that which is evil,
Right.
that's a flawed thought process, because it doesn't.
But is it a flawed thought process to say, okay, well, our society says this is wrong. You're on this side of the fence. You're wrong. You're on this side of the fence. You're in safe territory.
Are you saying is it a flawed concept or thought process if society sets the parameters of that which is evil?
Yeah.
Sure.
Right. Okay.
Yeah, I agree with that. Absolutely. I would say that's flawed too, because once again, you have different cultures.
So there is no black and white. There's just shades of gray on that.
Well, actually, they have the philosophy of evil, or the psychology of evil. It goes into philosophy and ethics, and I've got some of this stuff highlighted, and it talks about how victimist crimes and stuff along those lines. How much time we got before the break?
We're after the middle of the hour.
Are we good?
Yeah, 10:34.
Okay, let's do a quick break.
All right, we'll do a quick break. Hey, if you want to be part of the program, please give us a call at 541-284-7953, and we'll be right back. You're listening to The Common Sense Show on 1320 Info Radio.
Jacob Larson, the Common Sense Show. And we're having all sorts of technical problems today. It's awesome.
Yeah.
Nothing's working.
I love that.
It's great.
It's always a crapshoot.
Don't even have my intro music. That's awesome. Okay, so we're talking about evil. Theron seems to think that it's all, constructed in your mind. I've got some stuff here about the psychology of evil. Let's see. This was taken from the Psychology Wiki. Once again, it's a Wikipedia type of site, but it's devoted strictly to psychological issues. Psychology of evil. Some psychologists, psychiatrists, neuroscience have attempted to construct scientific explanations for the development of specific characteristics of an antisocial personality type called a sociopath. Sociopath is typified by extreme self-serving behavior and a lack of conscience, as well as conscious, as well as an inability to empathize with others or to restrain himself from or to feel remorse for harm personally caused to others. However, a diagnosis of antisocial or sociopathic personality disorder, formerly called psychopathic mental disorder, is sometimes criticized as being, at the present time, no more scientific than calling a person evil. There's much debate over this, however. Some mostly prominent, Robert D. Hare, author of Without Conscience, considered psychopathy to be widespread disorder, quite distinct from antisocial personality disorder. What critics perceive to be a moral determination is disguised, they argue, with a scientific-sounding name, but no complete description of a mechanism by which the abnormality can be identified. In other words, critics argue sociopaths are called such because they are first thought to be evil, a determination which itself is not derived by a scientific method. So basically, the reason why they are struggling with this is because the underlying premise of how people are being labeled based on their behavior is the baseline premise that they're evil. So the argument is, what if that isn't the baseline? What if the baseline is that people are inherently good, which is what we're talking here on Our Babies Born Good. It goes back to that, is a biological thing. Obviously, when it comes to mental disorders, I think genetics does play a role of it. I think that there is a biological role. I think that sometimes it is about nature, not about nurture. But how those chemical imbalances or lack of synapses or whatever you want to call it, how it takes place in the brain that constructs, that's still, we're still wondering about that.
Yeah, I don't know. You might be able to change my mind there on that. I guess I haven't.
It's closer to what you're saying. I mean, it's a little bit closer to what you're saying in regards to. It's all up to the person. But once again, you said it's all done through nurture, and under this circumstance,
it's
some
done through
psychologically
nurture.
Based stuff, it's not nurture.
I think it's done through nurture in the normal human mind. But, now that you bring that topic to the table, there can be chemical imbalances that...
But why isn't there a distinction between, a nurture type of evil and one that's a natural evil? Why wouldn't you draw a distinction there in terms of how the evil is arrived at? There's one circumstance or situation where somebody is born genetically with a psychological disorder. They are genetically a sociopath. That's their personality type.
May
That's
have been
how
the
they were
case
born.
with the
they're
Connecticut shooter.
more prone to being evil.
Right.
Okay, and it's still regarded and accepted as being evil. And then you have other people that, based on how they're treated, based on their environment, based on what happens around them, evil is happening around them, and as that, they become evil, or they do evil things based on what they've been taught. So why would we as a society call it the same thing when how it was derived or how it was achieved was done through two separate means?
It's the act, ultimately. It is the act of evil that's
so the root of evil, the cause of it's different.
Right.
Okay. Philosophy and ethics. The definition of what is considered evil otherwise may differ according to point of view. In the Western world, some philosophers reject the idea of evil. Plato, for example, argued that which we call evil is merely ignorance. We're just ignorant. And that which we call good is merely that which everyone desires. So once again, he's going back to we don't really know what is evil. And what we think is evil, the woman who's raped, she may think that was an evil thing that took place, that happened to her. But to the rapist, it was a good thing because he got what he wanted. Right. If he got away, it was even better.
Right.
And if she somehow changes her actions or behavior or how she goes about doing things so she's no longer in jeopardy of being raped, that would be good, right?
Yes.
So rape's not bad.
Well, in my mind, it is bad. In the mind of society, it is bad. But yeah, I understand what you're saying.
I'm looking for logical deductions here, man. I mean, how does it play out? I mean, if you those things out, let me throw another one at you here. I mean, because we're going to get to the devil and stuff. Problem of evil from the Wikipedia. In the philosophy of religion, the problem of evil is a question of how to reconcile the existence of evil with that of a deity who is omnipotent, omniscient, and omnibenevolent. So how do you do that? The logical problem of evil is this. This is the problem. The logical problem of evil emerges from 4 core positions. Number 1, an all-powerful, omnipotent God could prevent evil from existing in the world.
Okay.
Number 2, an all-knowing, omniscient God would know that there was evil in the world. He'd be aware of it. He could prevent it, and he would know where it existed.
Yes.
What caused it, what created it. And number 3, an all-good, omnibenevolent God would wish to prevent evil from existing in the world. So he is able to prevent it or stop it. He would be knowledge of how it was created and how evil took place, and he would have a desire to make it not happen. Number 4, there is evil in the world.
Yeah.
This is the problem with the logical. As J.L. Mackie has highlighted, there would appear to be a contradiction between these propositions, such as they cannot all be true, given that the 4th proposition would appear to be undeniable. The 4th one, that there is evil in the world, it's undeniable. It can be inferred from above that one of the other 3 must be false, and thus there cannot be an all-good, all-knowing, all-powerful God. To put it another way, if God does exist, he must be either impotent, ignorant, or wicked.
Wow. That's heavy.
So, did we just prove that God doesn't exist?
In the minds of some, perhaps.
Well, I mean, we've come to the conclusion, we've arrived at the conclusion in some degree that
I guess it just depends on
there
your
is
philosophy.
there is evil, and moral relativism doesn't work in terms or help in terms of describing it,
right?
Because it actually muddies up the water.
Okay. Well, what do you think? I mean, okay, you believe God exists, obviously.
What do I think?
So do you?
Who cares what I think, bro?
Well, do you believe that that God, is aware of this evil and doesn't intervene, or I mean, what's your take on that?
Well, let's look at Platinga's argument.
Okay.
This guy is Alvin Platinga, and he proposed a free will defense to argue the logical problem of evil. Because when you try to break it down into logic, I mean, you run into a few problems there. As opposed to theodicy, Platinga puts forth a defense, offering a new proposition that is intended to demonstrate that it is logically possible for a omnibenevolent, man, I can't even say this stuff, omnipotent and omniscient God to create a world that contains moral evil. Significantly, Plantinga does not need to assert that his new proposition is true, merely that it is logically valid. In this way, Plantinga's approach differs from that of traditional theodicy, which would strive to show not just that the new propositions are sound, but that they are also either true, plausible, or that there are good grounds in them. Thus, the burden of proof on Plantinga is lessened, and yet his approach may still serve as a defense against the claim by Mackie that the simultaneous existence of evil and an omnipotent and benevolent God is positively irrational. Plantinga summarized his defense. He says, a world containing creatures who are significantly free and freely perform more good than evil actions is more valuable, all else being equal, than a world containing no free creatures at all. Now, God can create free creatures, but he can't cause or determine them to do only what is right. For if he does so, then they aren't significantly free after all.
I agree with that.
Basically, by doing that, he takes away their freedom. They do not do what is right freely. To create creatures capable of moral good, therefore, he must create creatures capable of moral evil. And he can't give these creatures the freedom to perform evil and at the same time prevent them from doing so. As it turned out, sadly enough, some of these free creatures God created went wrong in the exercise of their freedom. This is the source of moral evil. The fact that free creatures sometimes go wrong, however, counts neither against God's omnipotence or against his goodness, for he stalled the occurrence of moral evil only by removing the possibility of moral good. So his argument is that in order for people to truly be free, God had to allow evil to exist, had to allow people to have access to it.
Yeah.
Because by removing that, then
you're no longer free.
You're no longer free.
Right.
The parameters are set. So you look at it from that standpoint, and you can say some people have made the argument that proves that God created evil. God created all things.
Okay. I struggle with that one, honestly, that God would create evil. I think...
so did evil exist outside of God?
I think...
is evil from God?
I don't think it's from God, but I think...
Of God.
I think it's allowed. I mean, it's not... It's like, he doesn't prevent it because that takes away the freedom.
I think that evil is constrained.
I don't know. I guess it all depends on how you look at it. I mean, if God creates everything, then yes, he would in fact have created evil. But I don't know. That one's over my head, way over my head.
That's why I'm asking the question. I mean, we're talking about evil.
Right.
Okay. So we've got some dictionary definitions. We've got different philosophical questions about it. I mean, people are looking at it from a genetic or biological standpoint on how people are predisposed to certain types of behavior patterns and stuff. I mean, we can sit here as a society and we can recognize things or behaviors that are good or bad based on, what works or what doesn't work for society.
Right.
But that's kind of a flawed concept, primarily because you have some different cultures in different parts of the world where cannibalism is okay. It's okay to eat another human being.
Right.
Now, we as a Western society are going to look at that act and we're going to go, there ain't nothing okay about that. I mean, not by any stretch of the imagination. But when you try to use a secular parameter to define what is moral or what is ethical, that's the problem you run into.
Yeah.
From a culture-based standpoint, there are certain things from different cultures that you're going to look at it and you're going to go, that is inherently evil, but in that culture, it isn't.
Right.
And under those circumstances, evil is not defined. And if it is not defined, it's allowed to run rampant. It's allowed to persist, exist. I mean, you take You take female mutilation, for
I
example.
was just thinking about
You're
that.
just thinking that.
Because that's very common in Indonesia. And in fact, a friend of mine and I were having this discussion because she's from an Islamic background.
Yeah.
And it's a rite of passage. And, they have all their reasons for why that's a good thing. But here in the West, we're appalled
People go crazy
by
about
that.
it. Yeah. Absolutely crazy about it. Right. That's that type of thought process, though. When you sit here and on one hand, and you're so politically correct that you're afraid to simply point out things that are basic, and say, "Hey, that's wrong. That's evil. That shouldn't be done." If you
said
can't
that wrong.
do
I
that,
said it was a rite of passage. Actually, it's a purification process in their minds. So that's
Okay.
the way they see it. It's purification, not rite of passage. But
I think it's a total disgrace. But
right for us here in the West.
Right.
But over there, it's common practice, and they.
So who
they
are
see
we
it as
to
cleansing.
impose our moralities on them? Who
Right.
are we to sit here and say what's evil to them? How can we do that? If God does not exist, if there is no spiritual aspect of things, how does secular morality fit the bill? It doesn't.
It doesn't.
It doesn't work because you can always argue your way around it.
Yeah.
I mean, you can always figure out a way to justify it.
Right.
There is, I mean, those are morality and definitions of
But
what
at
is
the same
good and
time,
what
we
is bad
can't
based on.
we can't allow people to murder somebody or whatnot. And
Why
let
not?
them get away with it because well,
no.
it's good
Why
for
not?
me.
Yeah, but it's not. See, it has nothing. I'm going to play the devil's advocate here because that's evil. But why not? Why couldn't we allow them to do that? If they want to commit genocide, I mean, in World War II, when I was reading through some of this stuff, in World War II, the Nazis actually had come to a place. They had arrived at a generalized overall consensus from the society that they lived in that genocide was okay.
Right.
They were doing the right thing by mass murdering people.
And that was over decades of influence.
Man, I don't care how you got there. I mean, how the hell did you get there? I
Right.
mean, you know what I'm saying?
Right.
I mean, how do you get to the point where eventually you say
It's okay.
you're looking at something that, such as that,
Yeah.
mass genocide,
Right.
and you're going, this is a good thing. We're doing a good thing here. This is okay. How do you get there? How do you not sit there and go, hey, that's evil? And how is it that, are we doing okay on time? 4 minutes left?
Yeah.
That's it?
Almost 3.
Oh man, okay. So, how do you get there as a society? And I don't know. I mean, and not sit there and call it. This is the problem right here. When you take morality from a secular standpoint and you beat around the bush in terms of determining what exactly is evil, this is what you run into. This is why the mass shootings and stuff.
Yeah.
I mean, this is why stuff like this happens. This is
Well,
why
you
it
kind of
takes
changed
place.
my mind here. That perhaps evil does exist, and it's not just all in the
Listen,
mind.
man, and we're totally going to run out of time. I'm not going to be able to finish it. But, I mean, does evil exist? Listen, okay, hundreds of thousands of religions over the course of decades have been discussing, and they're all from different parts of the globe, have been discussing, pointing through, labeling, thinking about, philosophizing over that which is evil. Obviously, it's present.
Yeah.
Obviously, it does exist. You know, you can argue all day long about the definition of it, but in terms of whether or not it exists, man, you got your head in the stand and not say it exists. Obviously, it exists. Where I'm at 2 minutes. Okay, so let's see here. Let's get to the end of the. Wow. Let's see. Once again, just in case you missed the first part of the show, next week we'll be having a special guest by the name of Blair Adams from the Black Student Union at Lane Community College in Eugene, Oregon, on the show, and we will be discussing race. This is a highly controversial topic and should make for a great show, so make sure to listen in. If you'd like what you heard today, please sponsor the show. Go to www.buycommonsense.com, click on the link to the show, check out the sponsor section of the site. Thanks for listening. Tune in next week, same day, same time.